Good. Is the stream going? Oops. Are we live?
Yep, got the restream.
Perfect. Yeah, there we go. All right. Yeah, thanks everybody for coming out to ETHFan here on Thursday night, 6 p.m. at D-Control. We've a few people have actually made it out tonight after all this torrential downpour. So really appreciate everybody making the journey. So for a few of you, a few new faces I've seen here tonight. A few of you guys, new folks. New folks. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, right. Anyways, yeah, this is kind of a long-running crypto hacker space that we've had for almost over 10 years at this point. Yeah, we host all kinds of different events. This one primarily is our kind of main one that we have going all the time. And yeah, we're here every Thursday now. So yeah, Mondays we'll have there's a poetry and open mic night that happens. Every other Tuesday there's sometimes a jam night. That's happening every other Tuesday. There's some jamming happening.
Play some music. Play music, Rich.
Tuesday nights, yeah. And then
Hyperliquid.
what's that? Yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, then Wednesday nights, kind of a few. We'll have DJ nights sometimes. Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. I think we're having a more kind of later night stuff after 9. Thursday we're here all the time, and yeah, weekends we're just kind of hanging out. So yeah, just a little bit about the space and what we're kind of doing all the time. So yeah. We've got a special guest tonight, though. Also one of our first timers. We're really pleased to have him in here. But yeah, we'd love to have you up here. Everybody, welcome Ken Sim.
Hold it.
All right.
Yeah, so just stand right there, because then we'll have you.
Hold on. Oh, I don't think.
You
Is
want
it
to take
working?
them?
All right. I'm not on mute. Okay, well, look, thanks for having me here. Super stoked to be here. As you know, I've been trying to get here for 2 years now, and this is probably one of the coolest spots in the entire city. Where do I start? Well, first of all, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. Okay, just that full disclosure there. But I've actually done, as a weekend warrior, a lot of, I've traveled through that ETH ecosystem. I've purchased some ETH. I've had a bunch of smart contracts blow up on me. I've had some pretty significant gas fees on stuff that disappeared. But it's still really cool. And, the reason I'm super stoked to be here is this is sort of like you can feel the buzz here. You have so many forward thinkers. You guys are super early, and this is literally the future, not only of our city, but our province, our country, and the world. And to be able to be here basically at ground zero, where, you say 10 years, but it's still early. And we can all feel it. It feels like, why doesn't anyone get it yet? But you can really feel it shifting. And so it's pretty cool to be here and following your story. And, while we may not have all the elected officials in the city, the province, or the country with us right now, you definitely have me. And there are a few of us that truly believe in the space and believe in you. And, we're here to help.
Amazing. Well, thank you. And I'm glad you got to try out the Pepsi machine, the old Pepsi machine.
Oh, yeah,
as well.
that was awesome. Yeah, so I used one of my 2 Lightning wallets. The other one I got blocked out of, so I got to reset my password there. But yeah, it was probably the best experience ever, where you basically zap a couple of sats over, and I got a Coke.
Soda come. Yeah, amazing. So I'm glad you got to try that out. Is it okay if I post that on the socials?
Yeah, go ahead.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Okay, wicked. Thanks very much, Ken. All right, we'll move on to.
Figure out all the rezoning.
Permits everywhere.
Hey, do it, man. You can do it.
Yeah. Alrighty. What? Oh yeah. So next week, So just one final thing. Next week we have the flagship Hyperliquid Canada event that will be taking place Thursday at 7 p.m. So if there's a Luma link that we have for that, which we can hand out and pass around, we'll get that out. That'll be if you're on our Twitter. If you're following our X account, we'll post it there. I think we maybe have already. Maybe we have. If not, we're going to repost it as well. So you can just sign up for that. It is kind of limited space, so try and be early if you can. Yeah, and that's next Thursday, 7 p.m. Exciting stuff. Hyperliquid. So
Cool.
yeah, and I think tonight we do have a POAP. I haven't tried it out yet, but there's a little black sign back there. If you put your phone, like with the NFC thing, on where the little area says POAP, just point to that if you can. Just point to it. Yeah, you're like, yes, right there. So just above there, if you point your phone onto the top of that, that'll take you to a website, and you just put in your Ethereum address or your ENS.
Or your email.
Or your email as well. And then you can mint a POAP that says you were here tonight. So be sure to do that. Yeah, other than that, I'll let Owen take it away here. And if you have any questions, just put your hand up and make sure you get a microphone because we got people listening at home. So, alrighty. Take it away.
Thank you. You want to grab the lights and the camera when you get the chance? Perfect. Cool. Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody. I'm going to go through an Ethereum back to basics. We do a lot of like technical talks here every week, but it's kind of nice to get back to the basics and get a high-level overview of why we're doing this, what the technology is, and how we can use it. So let's just start to dive in. So what is Ethereum? Ethereum is a decentralized and censorship-resistant blockchain. Ethereum is also, unlike a popular Bitcoin, it's secured by proof of stake rather than proof of work. And in general, Ethereum can be thought of as a programmable money. Now, Ethereum organization uses the infinite garden metaphor. So an infinite game is played with the purpose of winning, an infinite game for the purpose of continuing to play. It's kind of high-level abstraction, but what the message is that Ethereum is not only programmable money, but it's also just a human coordination layer and a way to come together and organize and continue fostering new things. So I'll take you through a few different things, mainly starting with staking, and then the world computer, just kind of the concept of smart contracts a little bit. And then a lot of innovations that have been made by Ethereum and the ecosystem, then scaling, institutional adoption, and a couple different extra things. So to start with staking, proof of stake is relatively newer in crypto. But instead of having a bunch of hardware to mine for proof of work, Ethereum has switched to proof of stake for a few different things. One of them that people like to mention is energy efficiency, because you don't have these huge buildings full of miners kind of wasting or producing a lot of heat and using a lot of energy. And then also it kind of has other benefits as improved security. So for proof of stake, anyone with 32 ETH can start staking and receive rewards for securing the network. And it's pretty easy and accessible for your machine to be able to run proof of stake. But what this is essentially you put up your ETH and you validate transactions. So you watch transactions coming through and you see, okay, does this look right? Yes, it looks right. I'm gonna put my stake towards this. So if you were, so you lock your stake, and then if you were to act maliciously, then the network can come together and say, hey, that was a bad actor. Their stake should be removed. So you can lose your stake if you are acting maliciously. Validators, so if you don't have like 32 ETH, because that's quite a bit of money, you can also join a pool and you can still use your hardware and your 1 ETH or your 2 ETH or whatever. And you can still secure the network, but you would pool with other people. And then there's also liquid staking. So if you don't want to lock up your ETH, you can essentially let somebody else stake for you, and you can have this liquid token that you can then sell or use elsewhere in the Ethereum ecosystem. So Lido is a big player in that space. I also have, I don't know.
So in the event somebody asks.
Hold on. Do you have a microphone? Sorry. You want to grab one right in front of you there?
Hey, so in the event that somebody acts maliciously, one of the validators, if you have this hyperliquid thing where it's not actually your ETH that you're staking, who loses, right? Who forfeits their stake?
So yes, so the issuer, so Lido, is the staker in this sense, and they are issuing this liquid token, right? And so if Lido were to not act maliciously, then they would lose, and people would lose trust in Lido, and you wouldn't necessarily want to use Lido anymore. Liquid staking is not the best way to secure the network. Like it's better.
Yeah,
for
you're
people
betting
to
on
stake at
somebody
home.
else's. You're betting your Ethereum on somebody else's honesty, right? So integrity.
Yeah, it's also yes. So it's not necessarily like there's things to consider when using that for sure. I can't show links here. Okay. We'll look at some links at the end, and I can show you some more things. So security. So validators are randomly chosen to propose a new block and attest to a new block. So if you're staking on the network, you might get randomly chosen to propose a block. And in order for somebody to take over the network, you would need over 60% of the stake. So it's actually quite large, over 21 million ETH or $69 billion in order to take over the network and kind of push whatever transactions you want. I was looking earlier today because I was like, okay, well, like, what would it be to take over Bitcoin? And the hardware would just be about 10 billion, I think. And then you have to factor energy costs there, but there is a large security threshold with Ethereum that made it a quite secure network. The other nice thing is that,
Yeah, I was just going to add one piece to that too. With so not only is it's not just about buying, because if you just bought all this ETH, if you decided, so you need 29 billion, that's probably going to drive the price up. So it's going to actually end up being quite a bit more, I would imagine, because like it's if you could OTC 69 billion with someone, which doesn't exist, then you don't move the price. But you're going to be pushing the price up massively. So it's probably going to turn into, let's call it 200 billion or something absolutely astronomical, because it kind of gets crazier as you buy more. Then you need to take all of that ETH and you need to stick it into validators. And as you put them, the more that you put into validators, the more the queue gets filled up. So there's like this special kind of buffer as you enter in. And so as all of this ETH is getting as these hundreds or thousands of validators, I guess at this point, start coming in into the network, there's a big massive buffer where people could start saying, oh, well, wait a sec, we see that there's some sort of a malicious actor coming in that's trying to take over the network. Maybe we can do something about this. And you would have like, it might take like few months. It would probably take months. It might take a year for all of those ETH to actually get past the queue and in place. So there's like a lot of ways to kind of observe and see that these sort of attacks are coming and have time to like react and make decisions on it and be able to say, actually, you know what, maybe we see that this is a nation state actor. Maybe we can do something about this. Yeah. So it's not just as simple as, I bought the ETH and I took over the network. No, it's not like that at all. So anyways, just pointing that out.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And you don't necessarily have that with Bitcoin because you just have to buy the hardware and run it, right?
Fair point. Yeah, and immediately as soon as you run all that hash power, if you could get it all online and coordinated, still a big coordination effort behind all that. Yeah. But the moment that you do that, you can start 51 attacking the network ASAP.
Yeah. The other nice thing is that the scaling of Ethereum security doesn't necessarily require a ton of hardware like proof of work. So if you have more ETH that you want to stake or people want to stake more, it's not necessarily a cost of hardware. It's a fairly simple computer that you can start validating with. I did switch things up here so we could take a look at links. I have one here that shows the current stake. So you have these are individual miners. So mining at home is 25% of the network, and then you have Lido, which is 23% of the network. There's a bunch of other staking custodians that contribute to it, but 29% of Yeah, 29% of all ETH is staked, so over 36 million. And there's over 1 million different validators.
And just shout out to Dobby, because I think he's been doing this stuff for years with the Dune dashboards.
Oh, Hill Dobby.
So
yeah.
Hill Dobby has been killing it. So I remember talking to him back in my early days with this stuff. So I'm glad that he's still keeping this active, because this is like grassroots stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay. So Andrew, did you have a question? Or do you have a question?
Remember when liquid staking came out, Lido was pretty big, and there was a threat in terms of centralization, and then they figured out a way to not have Lido have all the network effects of accumulated ETH, et cetera, et cetera. So what was the process there exactly that got them back down and at a spot where it's more comfortable?
I believe a large portion of it was like advocacy for staking at home. I don't know if you remember much about that time.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how it all planned out, but they also created this like CSM thing, like the community staking module, which allows smaller users to spin up like smaller validators.
Yeah.
And that kind of, a lot of the people who were staking with Lido, or those validator operators, I think went into this more of a CSM thing where it was, 1-2 ETH in order to validate. And so you're doing that as a collective, kind of like what Obol is doing as well, where it's like this distributed validator tech. So it's something along those lines. I think that was a big part of it. And they just recognized like, okay, this is a threat and maybe we should, do something about it. So I think it's still kind of like under the Lido blanket, but just the the validation distribution is different. So it's kind of like, mining with you maybe your business still owns the same miners, for example, in Bitcoin. Like you might own all the miners, but like they're with different mining pools, for example. So and again, you can't just like switch your hash power real quick. Like with this, you'd have to unwind your validators and then restake them. And so actually sorry to go on a little bit further here, but there was recently some issue with StakeWhy? No, what the hell? There was one of these where they had some sort of bug or something, and so they ended up just unwinding all the validators. There was like Clin, thank you. Yep, or Kiln. So Kiln was there was some, I can't remember the exact deal, but they ended up unwinding all these validators, and then people were like, "Oh, everybody's rushing to the door, and they're going to dump ETH." And it was like, no, it was actually because there was some sort of bug, and they just unwound all their validators, and then those all went to CSM, I think, or that was their goal, or they went to Obol and doing some other stuff to help distribute the network.
Cool. Another thing to touch on here is network fees. So if you're submitting a transaction, you do have to pay a fee, a gas fee. But this is split up into two things. So there's a base fee that basically ensures your transaction will get included within a reasonable amount of time. And that is burnt. So the ETH that you spend on that base fee is destroyed. And then there's a priority fee. So if you want your transaction to be the next transaction that gets in, you want it right away, you can pay a high priority fee that's given directly to the validator as an incentive to put your transaction in there much quicker. And then you have new ETH that's minted for validators to participate in the network. But it's not like Bitcoin, you have a set amount and you have halvenings. The ETH, it fluctuates. So based on how many people are staked, there's different amounts that will be distributed. I also have an interesting link for this. So this dashboard, Ultrasound Money, shows you the ETH supply. So because you have this burn mechanism and then you have the different mechanism for emissions, you can have an inflationary ETH or you can have deflationary ETH. So if more people are using Ethereum, the total supply actually deflates. But if you have less people using it, it inflates in order to keep validators incentivized to run. So we have right now it's a 0.75% supply growth every year. But then in times where it's more in demand, it will go deflationary.
Yeah, if you go back to like the time frame again, just keep going. I think it should be like a max or something. So if you go the panda is the that shows from, yeah, and so then it shows from the merge. So
you had times here where you're deflating, then inflating.
So you can see less supply exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So the world computer. So the reason why Ethereum has become so popular is because you can do more on it than other chains. So what is a computer? A computer is a state machine. So it essentially takes some inputs, it runs a program on those inputs, and then it produces some outputs. And you can store those outputs in a storage, or temporary values are stored in memory. So like with this equation on the left-hand side, you have these inputs, 1 and 2. You add those together, you get the third or the output, and you can store that output somewhere. So as Ethereum computer, Ethereum also has storage, just like a computer. And then smart contracts are the programs that can modify the storage, or the programs that are run. And then changes to the storage must follow that program. So this is what the validators are looking at. They're checking, okay, somebody ran this program. Did they run it properly? This was the output. That makes sense. Okay, we'll put it into this block. Ethereum is essentially a world computer, a distributed computer. So you can run things like on the left-hand side here, or right-hand side, I have a small program here. So if we have somebody's balance and another person's balance and we want to send an amount, those are kind of what the inputs would be. Those first two might be in storage. And then we have a smart contract, which says if the sender of this transaction is the user 1 with the balance 1, then we can subtract from that balance and send it to the other person's balance. And then we can store those values on Ethereum. So then you can come along after and you can see, okay, this is somebody's balance after this transaction, and the validator validated this transaction. Although, like, it's not necessarily like a normal computer, you have fees. So every operation that you do costs gas, and the storage operations can be quite expensive. So if you want to send somebody a token, it's pretty easy. You just update 2 values. If you want to do a really complex program where you're storing a lot of data, like let's say you want to put an image on the blockchain, that can be very expensive. Now memory is cheaper, so if you have a temporary value that you're working with in your transaction, you're still going to pay for it, but it's a bit cheaper than the storage itself. And there is a gas limit, so there's a limit to how many things you can do in a single transaction, which means that we have to make these programs pretty simple to be able to run them on Ethereum. But there's still quite some cool things that you can do. I'll tell you a bit about that. So Ethereum has innovated a lot, or the community around it has created a lot of innovations that in decentralized technology. One of those is stablecoins. So we've talked here recently the other week about different kinds of stablecoins. Stablecoins are generally a term for a token that's pegged to fiat currency. So you have like a US dollar coin that should be pegged to US dollar and stay at that value. And stablecoins are really a way for people to kind of exit your tokens, but you don't want to go to your bank or you don't want to have cash. You can have this stablecoin, but it's not fluctuating. And you also still have this self-custody aspect of it. So you can hold these tokens yourself, and the bank can't take them away from you, essentially. The really nice thing about stablecoins, especially for like the average user, is that fees are static and transfers are permissionless. So you can send money to somebody cross borders. You don't have to do a wire transfer that takes a week, and it's instant on Ethereum with stablecoins. Also, the fees are static, so it might cost you, I don't know, 20 cents to send $1 million, or 20 cents to send $1. So there's some benefits there. There's also, like, stablecoins is very generic. So there's a bunch of different kind of stablecoins. The 2 major ones I'll go into. The largest are asset-backed stablecoins, or stablecoins that are issued by a centralized entity. So you have like USDC and USDT. These are backed by treasuries that this company holds. So they'll buy a bunch of treasury bills that is debt to the US government, and then they can mint these tokens on chain. So everybody can say, okay, like they have enough treasury bills that this should be worth $1, and everybody kind of sticks to that. There is a bit of trust here because you're blending the real world with crypto, and you have these companies that are buying these treasury bills, and they might not be super transparent. So there's a bit of trust here. It's not the perfect solution, but it is a great way to have these stable coins on chain. I also have an interesting piece here. I have a couple links. So I was curious, can we see how much? So Tether is one of the largest stablecoin issuers, and they have, they're one of the largest holders of treasury bills. Yeah, so in assets, this isn't necessarily just treasury bills. Where was the treasury bills? Here. Okay, so they hold over $112 billion worth of treasury bills, or 112 billion treasury bills. Yes, USD. Yeah. Okay. So they have over 112 billion, and their total assets are 181 billion. Now, I don't know if it's on this page. Oh shoot. The total USDT on chain is around that, just a bit under. But you can see that they have a lot of treasury bills.
Is a lot of it on now?
You have a mic over there?
Say how much of it's on Ethereum? Or just Tron?
I don't think this report shows.
I just think it's funny how much Tron.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like even when I was in Thailand, they use it there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
There's 183 billion in circulating supply right now.
183 billion. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, they
That's
have
a
that
lot.
matched about. Oh, they're a little bit under. Okay, but
I didn't
this
think it was that high, to be honest.
This was an older report.
Yeah, grown.
Yeah, it's huge. So if you look at it like compared to other countries, this is in the, what was it, billions of dollars. So they're at 112. So they're just above UAE, below Saudi Arabia. I think they're like 10th or something.
Yeah, what company is behind Tether? I kind of forget. I know Brock Pierce, I think, helped make it or something. But like, I just feel like everyone talks about Circle now. But,
Yeah.
like, Tether is probably 10 times bigger.
They're similar. Tether is quite a bit bigger. But they're still like fairly similar in the amount that's issued. A lot of it is on Tron as well. But yeah, there was one chart in here as well. Yeah. So in TD put out this. It's random. Yeah. So holders of treasury bills. So Circle is quite a bit below. This was in 2020. When was this? Oh, 2025. Okay. Yeah. So, but in 2024 versus 2025, like it's growing like crazy. Tether was at 80 versus 112 now, and Circle just like 30-ish. Yeah. So the amount of value held in stablecoins is just nuts, and it's one of the biggest things in DeFi for sure, or in crypto.
Just turn it on, press the button at the bottom.
Hold the button on the bottom.
Hold it on for like 2 seconds. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, just checking on Wikipedia that I remembered Cantor Fitzgerald CEO Howard Lutnick, who's the current Trump administration Secretary of Commerce, says that he said in January 2024 that Cantor Fitzgerald was acting as custodian for Tether's reserves.
Interesting. Yeah, so in general, like there is still a lot of trust with these kinds of stablecoins, but there's also other kinds of stablecoins. So like DAI and Bold, Bold is what was Liquidity, are backed by other assets on chain. So it's backed by Ethereum or other tokens, and they're fully decentralized. So they operate like a loan. So let's say you put up your collateral in Ethereum. So you have $3,000 worth of Ethereum or 4,000, and you can borrow 3,000 of BOLD against it. So you have this $4,000 worth of Ethereum. Let's say it's 1 Ethereum and you're borrowing 3,000 BOLD against it. Now, on chain, you want to check that, okay, your value of Ethereum doesn't drop lower. So like here in this diagram, I have a liquidation event. So if your value drops lower than your amount borrowed, or there's a bit of a buffer so that there's no bad debt, but when it comes too low, then the liquidator will buy the stable coins on the open market and burn them in order to get that Ethereum. So it works. The small trust factor here is the oracle that tells you that, okay, Ethereum is at this price. But it's much better because you can look on chain and you can actually see these numbers and see, instead of looking for how much treasury bills USDC and USDT have, Circle and Tether, you can just look on chain and see that this amount of stablecoins is backed by this amount of assets. And it's a much more transparent system. They're not as widely adopted, so it's harder to use them, but they are a really cool innovation that smart contracts have allowed.
Yeah, and just pointing on that again, like the liquidation engine is what makes this interesting, where liquidators are actually incentivized to to go in and liquidate, and then when you're redeeming that for like the equivalent value of ETH. So if that stable coin is actually always backed by X amount of ETH that you can go and reclaim for. So even if there's a depeg and that as well, if there's a depeg in price, people are buying that because they know that like if it's 95 cents, great, because I can get $1 worth of the underlying collateral that is attached to it. So there's the incentivization mechanism that keeps everything in check and in balance. And when this is all on chain and you have people doing this with bots and doing this with whatever else, it all works in an automated system just because of market structures.
Yeah, I have my loans. Do you have a mic around you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Side question about stable coins. So those are backed by the dollar. But do you know the mechanism for the algorithmic ones? How do they keep the peg?
Algorithmic, I am not covering in this because it's like very dangerous in my opinion. Most are kind of a wishy-washy math that don't necessarily hold up, and you have things like UST that just kind of implodes. So, yeah, I don't know if I fully trust it. Yeah.
I'm just trying to imagine a scenario where besides like USD, there's say Euro or some random other, say, Australian dollar that's created into a stable coin, and the country goes through a crisis and their currency, for whatever reason, inflates like crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like the mark.
Yeah.
What happens to the valuation of ETH in that scenario? That's one. And generally, how does that affect the security of the underlying token? Yeah. So, and also related to this is we value currently everything pegged to the dollar.
Yeah.
What if the dollar itself inflated away? What happens there?
Yeah. So yes, so this like 2099 that I have here, that's the price of of ETH in USD. So if you had another currency like let's say a Canadian dollar stable coin, you would also want a price that tells you what's the conversion from Canadian dollars to US dollars and then US dollars to Ethereum. So you also have that currency conversion there. If things get really big, then you also want to know like what's your slippage on that trade. I mean, FX is pretty easy for that, but yeah. But you have, so also for your second question, if the currency is inflating, then your value of your underlying asset is going to be more. So like if BOLD is a USD stablecoin, so if USD is just crazy inflation, then the value of your ETH would probably go up in terms of USD, and you would actually get further away from your liquidation because your value of your collateral is going up relative to what you're borrowing. If that makes sense? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, a couple questions. We'll go to you.
Quickly. Has there been any link up between certain stable coins and physical metals at any point?
Physical metals? Yeah. So, I mean, there are, like Tether has a XAUT. So they have a gold token that's backed by gold. I don't know if they might have a silver one as well. But yeah, there are other stable assets. Could you pass the mic over there? There's another question.
Yeah, I just had a quick
yeah.
comment. Hyperliquid uses only USD stablecoin, which is from Arbitrum, right?
Yeah.
And that holds 50% by Arbitrum Hyperliquid. Why isn't there like any USD, to pairs? Because I've talked to some developers and think, you can't have it with some smart contract logic, but just want to hear your thoughts on that, and because that's USDT being the most liquid stablecoin on chain, right? So it's not really making sense.
Yeah, for sure. So a bit more of a complex thing to talk about, but when you have those markets, so like Hyperliquid has perpetual markets that are all denominated in USDC, or the collateral is USDC. If you add other collaterals, there's issues there. When you go, so in decentralized finance, you're essentially interacting with other people directly. So if you have multiple different collateral types, the logic becomes a bit trickier there, especially for a contract like perpetuals, where you have to settle in some US dollar. So if you just say that it's USDC that we're settling in, it's way simpler than saying that we're settling in USD, and then you have to do the conversion from USD to USDC and USDT, which can be off by little tiny amounts. There are other, like on Hyperliquid specifically, there's their EVM, which you can use USDT in, and they have bridges into it. But for the perpetual markets, it becomes quite complex.
So if you're building on Hyperliquid, you can enable USDT if it's on perpetuals.
So for perpetuals, also the HIP3 they're releasing, which you can use other collateral types. If you want to use their standard perpetuals, you just have to use USDC. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the other thing too with perpetuals is that if you start having other collaterals in there, so if you were to have a USDC and a USDT market, you're also fragmenting the liquidity, therefore making the book less deep, right? So you still want to have a better experience for trading and to have a deeper book with one collateral versus two. Maybe in the future when like there is higher demand and we're seeing like the book could be spread across and there's demand for that, then I think that's where maybe you could see additional US dollar denominated collaterals. But
it also increases risk. So like let's say you had like Bitcoin as a collateral type for Hyperliquid. You also have to manage that Bitcoin price is not going to drop and you're going to get liquidated because of that rather than your position. It becomes quite a bit more complex.
And much easier on a centralized server than a distributed thing. So,
yeah. Did you have a question yet, or?
I was just thinking to walk through a little bit more explicitly the kind of metrics for the diagram you have up there in terms of when the liquidation would happen, at what sort of range of percentages. I know it'd be different every time and that sort of thing. Yeah,
so I actually, initially I had a loans section before this, which is why I had this more complex diagram here. I'm going to get into that next. And then I don't have any like specific numbers for liquidation mechanisms, but I can talk a bit more on that.
I'm going to do a talk eventually, probably in December, about lending, borrowing, and we'll get into all the depths of this. Because one of the projects I work for is a fork of this liquidity program, or protocol. So I'll be getting into that, like those numbers that you're looking for. I'll get into that at that point. So, and I'm happy to async with you too.
Yeah, less even with the specific numbers, because again, it would vary per contract, per platform. But just in a general sense, how the liquidation mechanism would work. I mean, and I can walk through it in my head. If it drops 5%, then you liquidate this, and what's the return, and that sort of thing. But explicitly to walk through exactly what the quote unquote risk would be.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll talk a bit more about that in this section.
There's one caveat to stablecoins that I think is relevant. When you should put a star around it because it's not really crypto, because it can be taken away. Even if you have the keys to the account that has stables, the contract that controls the stables can block you from using those stables, right?
Yeah, so you have to be, yeah, so that's a good point. A lot of those are the centralized entities. So like USDC has something in their contract where if you're a nation state like North Korea or a wallet that has been blacklisted, they could stop you from that. It's not necessarily like a lot of these other, I don't know what DAI does for Bold.
Bold can't do anything. You can't touch it. Can't do shit.
Yeah. So because of like these loan type stable coins are much more permissionless, and these companies aren't necessarily, or the protocols aren't necessarily worried about who has the rights to my treasury bills that I'm holding. It's a little bit more decentralized. Okay, yeah, let's talk about loans. So loans on Ethereum are completely permissionless. Unlike the traditional finance world, like where you have to apply for a loan and you have to have good credit to be able to get a loan, anybody can get a loan on Ethereum. And one of the caveats or reasons for that is because loans are over-collateralized. So borrowers must provide more in value than what they're borrowing, which is not, it's quite a bit different from traditional finance. So if you have your salary and you can say, hey, I make this much, can you give me 20 times this for a home? That's not necessarily what you're using loans for on Ethereum because they are over-collateralized, but there's still a lot of utilities that you can have for it. When you enter a loan, you lock your collateral into a smart contract until you pay back that loan. So like here, I have a little diagram where we're depositing 1 ETH, which is worth $4,000, and you're withdrawing or borrowing against that 3,000 USDC. Now, so if the collateral value drops below that borrowed value, the collateral is liquidated. This is very simplified diagram and numbers. Like you were saying, you're more interested in kind of what those numbers are. So it's not when Ethereum drops below 3,000 USDC, because there is that $1 that's not accounted for in this diagram. You would have some buffer above that. So let's say you have 3,000 USDC that you're borrowed against, and you initially deposited 4,000. You'd probably get liquidated at like $3,200 for your 1 ETH, because you need to incentivize somebody to come and buy that ETH and actually liquidate you, or buy back those tokens on the open market and liquidate you. So there is a bit of a buffer, so you would lose some of your value. It's not exactly when it drops below the value that you borrowed. So if you borrow 3,000 USDC and you are liquidated, you still have that 3,000 USDC, but you lost your collateral and you can't get that back. It's gone after you are liquidated. But the reason that we have over-collateralized loans is because the system is anonymous. There's no credit scores on chain. You can't just borrow a ton of money and have no way to pay it back. This, using smart contracts and locking your tokens in there, ensures that there are those tokens backing that borrowed amount. No, so it is the smart contract would hold all that collateral and you're borrowing against it. So there is like a smart contract. It's not a centralized entity, but it is a contract that's distributed on Ethereum. And you can check like what's the total loaned amount and the borrowed amount. And, yeah.
Is the smart contract essentially a wallet then? So
yeah, so a smart contract is kind of like a wallet. It can hold funds. and it's essentially a like I was saying earlier, like it's a section of storage. So you can store values there. So you can have your like, okay, in this ETH USDC market, this person lent this and borrowed this and lent this and borrowed this. And those funds, the right to those funds is stored in that contract.
But I guess what I'm getting at is it a transaction? So if I take this loan out and I have 1 ETH in my account, does that ETH leave my account, or is there just a block put on my account, if you will?
Yeah, essentially a block. So, or sorry. So if you enter a loan, you're sending your ETH from your wallet to the smart contract. Yeah. And then the smart contract has some USDC that other people have deposited, and that USDC gets sent back to your wallet. Does that make sense? Cool.
So that in that case, I don't necessarily know who the USDC lender is.
Yeah, you might not. And you're trusting that people are liquidating in time. So that, because if there wasn't a liquidation and ETH fell to $2,000 and there was $3,000 borrowed against it, well, there's not enough like to pay back everybody that was lending USDC essentially, right? Or like, yeah, there's not enough funds in the contract. You have to ensure that people are getting liquidated. Yeah, and that's a risk thing to think about. Another huge innovation of Ethereum was AMMs. So very basic concept. If you want to exchange your tokens, you need some market to be able to exchange it on. And these are what we call automated market makers on Ethereum. We can't have a traditional market because we need something simplified. It's too complex to run it on Ethereum. And if you had to say, pay a fee for every order that you made. So like, let's say, oh, I want to buy ETH at $1,000 when it gets there. Traditionally, you wouldn't pay for that order. You pay for the fee when you fill it, but you would have to pay a gas fee on Ethereum for that. And it would be too large and too much complexity to run on Ethereum. So we have Hayden at Uniswap created the AMM. And it's essentially a tool to swap tokens on chain. And it's directly based on like a supply-demand curve. So we have these tokens in a smart contract, and this is the AB market. So Ethereum, USDC, or Bitcoin, whatever. And right now we have 1A is equal to 1B, and there's 10 of each tokens in the pool. So if we wanted to, say, come and sell 1A to buy 1B, we go and make a swap on this pool. And what we're doing is we're sending our 1A token to the pool and taking out the 1B token. So now there's 11 A tokens and 9 B tokens in the pool. And this has changed our price. So now the price of 1A is 0.81 B. So we have this pool that people are sending both ways tokens through. And if you sold a lot of A, let's say you wanted to sell 10 A, then the pool would just have 20 A in it and 0 B, and the price of B is essentially infinite. Like, you can't buy any more B. But the idea is that it's a supply-demand curve. So the formula for this pool is X times Y equals K. X is the total supply of token A, and Y is the total supply of token B, and then K is a constant value. So when we have our 10A and 10B, we have X equals Y. They're both at 10. But then an example here to kind of understand how this works is that we have 10A, 10B, and K is 100 because it's X times Y, 10 times 10. And if we want to trade 1A for B, our X would go up to 11 and our K would be 100. It stays the same. And so we want to figure out how much is going to be left in this pool when we take our B out. So it's essentially finding how much B we can get for 1A. So we take a simple equation, 11 times Y equals 100, and we get Y equals 9.09, which would mean that we get 0.91 B out. So we get a little bit less than 1 to 1, because you want to, as the amount of tokens in the pool differs, you want to kind of not make it just fall off the end of the cliff, like I said with the 0B before. A little bit complex and hard to do at a higher level. But if there's any questions on this, I have one more slide here, I'm realizing. When users are selling a lot of A, the supply in the pool goes up, causing the price of A to fall and the price of B to rise. And then you have liquidity providers, who are the people that are putting these tokens in the pool for people to transact with. And there is a small fee that goes to these LPs for each trade. So it's a bit math heavy compared to traditional finance, where you have just, hey, I want to buy at this level or I want to sell at this level. You have to kind of create a mechanism for it to be simplified and automated. Cool. Yeah.
What would you say K actually is?
Oh yeah. Okay. What?
In the physical sense, X is a token, Y is a token. What is K?
So yes. So what is K? So K is the constant. So because we want to have the price kind of trail off at the higher ends, K is the total supply of X, or the total supply of A and the total supply of B multiplied. So that stays the same. So no matter when somebody's swapping through there, K always stays at 100 if there's 10 A tokens and 10 B tokens. It's just because those times each other, 10 times 10 is 100, and so that 100 will always stay the same.
Got that, but in the real world sense.
Yeah, so you can look at a pool and like see, okay, there's 1 million ETH in the pool and 3 billion USDC. That K is those times each other. So it stays the same.
Is it representing some relationship between token?
Yes, so the amount of tokens in the pool. So it is a constant, so that when people are swapping through, it keeps it. Yeah, so if you have like,
and then you want to stay at that rate.
yeah, so that constant is used to determine how much you get out of it. So here K is 100 because there is, like, somebody created this pool of A and B tokens with 10 tokens each. That makes K 100. If somebody comes and adds 2 tokens of each, it's going to go up to 144.
I guess I'm trying to understand the unit, like the physical meaning.
Yeah, it's the supply.
Is it kilograms? Is it P?
No.
Money squared?
It's the number of tokens. So like here we have 10 A tokens and 10 B tokens. And it's just the number of the tokens that are in the pool. Cool. Okay. One more innovation to talk about. DAOs. So this is less finance related, but it kind of ties into that infinite garden metaphor that the Ethereum Foundation likes to use. And a DAO is a smart contract that allows participants to vote on actions in a trustless way. So DAOs are kind of like a democracy on chain. So everybody has a wallet. And if we want to create a DAO for decontrol, and we can all come together and we can say that everybody's vote is worth 1. And so if we want to, let's say we start up this DAO like a company and we fund it with 1 ETH, and we say, hey, okay, what should we do with this 1 ETH? Should we send it to David? Then we all vote on it. And everybody's vote is worth 1, and we sign that with our wallet. It's a very interesting way because it's kind of like a true democracy. If everybody had a wallet, like let's say your passport was your wallet, and everybody were to be able to vote online, you can really look at what happens, and you can see very transparently that this many people voted, and they used their wallet to vote, so it was what they wanted to do. It's a more interesting and like social aspect to Ethereum, which is quite cool.
Can you explain like on-chain governance a little bit?
Yeah, so I have that in my next one as well. The other thing about this is that like anybody can create a proposal if you set up your DAO in this way. So it's a very democratic process. So you also have like projects will often allow users to vote. So if you have a project like Uniswap, the AMMs that we talked about, and they want to change the mechanism of their pool. They gave out a bunch of Uni tokens, and essentially your tokens is your voting weight. So if you have 10 Uni tokens and the total tokens out there is 100, you have 10% of the vote to determine what happens with that protocol. It's really cool because it's kind of like everybody's a board member of this company, and you can directly participate without having this organizational overhead, and it's much simpler. You can also kind of create a DAO and choose a bunch of different parameters on it. So if we want to do token weighted voting, you might have issues where somebody has 50% of the supply. So they actually end up determining how this company runs or what this protocol does. And maybe it's not great. Maybe we want to have everybody that's used the protocol to have a voting weight of 1. Or if we want to make sure that we don't get spam proposals, we just make sure that whoever's creating a proposal has to have at least 10% of the vote or something like that. So it's very configurable, and you can do a lot of different things with that. Okay, so why do we do these things on Ethereum? Like, why not use traditional means? Everything's transparent, so you can see everything that happens. And there's block explorers that you can look through all these transactions and view what's going on. Now, a lot of that is you have to have a very technical knowledge, but it's also improving and becoming, there's a lot of dashboards that are easy for people to use and kind of see what's going on. It's a look behind the curtain, and it's a really valuable technology that can be used in a lot of different ways. The rules that are defined in smart contracts also cannot be broken. It's kind of what we talked about with that 61, if you need $69 billion worth to basically break these contracts. Now there are caveats with that. Sometimes code is not perfect. People have bugs in their code, and they can be broken. But if something is written well, it's everything that happens on chain has to follow that. There's a common term used: code is law. There's no human factor or trust that is required in centralized entities. So, yes. Convention. Code is convention. Code is law. Yeah, yeah. You could say that. You could say that. But it is kind of powerful too to say code is law. Like it is a strong word. It's hard to back out from it. Yeah, it's hard to. Yeah. Yeah. And if there is bugs in laws as well. Yeah. Okay, so shifting a little bit, scaling. So as I said before, I kind of mentioned there, like if you want to send $1 million worth of value, it might cost you 10 cents in fees, but also if you want to send $1, it's going to cost you 10 cents in fees. So you need to have something that's insanely cheap in order to kind of compete with traditional finance. So Ethereum is built to be highly secure and decentralized, but we have these layer 2 networks that are built for higher throughput and lower fees. So you can do a lot of things like that you can't do traditionally on mainnet. If you want to do something that you can't spend 10 cents on, you can spend a fraction of a cent. And you have these layer 2 networks, which essentially piggyback on the security of Ethereum And there's a couple different ways that they do that. One is with zero knowledge cryptography, and one is with optimistic technology to kind of compress these transactions. You still inherit the security of Ethereum, but you maybe have a few things that you got to be careful about. And it's maybe not the epitome of security. But why using layer 2? Much cheaper and faster. Some layer 2s might be capable of censorship, which is one of the things that you would have to look out for. Like if you really are a high-profile person that you think, oh, you could be censored, then maybe you want to use mainnet. L2s are also ideal for like quick payments. So if you want to send $1, you can send it for super cheap. And then also more complex applications you can kind of build on these because the restrictions aren't as high. It's not as expensive as Ethereum. But if you want to, like, you're a large fund, you're moving tens of millions of dollars around and you don't want any sort of risk at all, then you probably want to use mainnet. But layer 2s are great for a lot of things. Then we have, wait, I think I have a link here. Here's just a dashboard that's great for layer 2s, and you can kind of see also the risks that are involved with them. So if we look at Arbitrum, which is one of the largest, there's 16 billion staked here. Here, we can see that like the one issue is that Arbitrum could upgrade the network with a security council. So like a small DAO, they have some signers. And so if you really didn't trust that, they could upgrade the network, and then you might be screwed. And then you have an exit window of 10 days. So if Arbitrum goes down, then you have to wait 10 days to kind of get your funds out, and you can do that through mainnet. But they have a lot of other great things that they've done to improve the security. But yeah, L2 is a great thing to check out for kind of looking at layer 2s.
So are you inferring then that for the layer 2s, if I want to make a transaction on it, I have to assign my crypto to that layer 2, and it's de facto held in that layer 2?
Yes, yeah. So if you want to use a layer 2, you would have to transfer it from your mainnet, from Ethereum mainnet to that layer 2 to be able to use it on that layer 2.
For gas fees or for payments?
For anything that you want to do on that chain. So like, let's say, yeah, you want to use some...
I want to send you 100 ETH.
Yeah. But you usually probably do that on an L2 because we don't want to pay expensive fees to send to each other, right? So you would have to move your funds from mainnet to that L2 and send it to me on that L2.
And how would you move it to that L2?
Through a bridge. So there is a smart contract that essentially when you send it to your layer 2, you lock it in that contract, and then it gets created on the layer 2.
And then when you receive it,
yes,
you take it out of the layer 2 and put it on your mainnet if that's what you chose to do.
If that's what I choose to do. Layer 2s are much more popular than mainnet. Like most people would use a layer 2.
But are there bridges between different layer 2s?
Yeah, there are as well. Yep.
So do I need to constantly be juggling in my wallet?
Depends on your wallet. Some would maybe do that for you behind the scenes. Some of them you may have to keep track of. And yeah, like if a layer 2 is popular, like Base right now is quite popular, so people use that for payments. But if you want to do something on Arbitrum, then you have to go move it over there. And it is a bit of an overhead. But there are a lot of teams working on kind of putting that in the background, so you as a user don't have to think about it.
Yeah, and just to point out that like you're always having native bridges that go from like mainnet to the L2, and that bridge can be like basically built into the protocol, let's call it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're going to go from an L2 to an L2, you're kind of using like a third-party service is the way to think about it. And a lot of those have done a tremendous amount of work now that are very safe and secure and have had, billions at this point, run through it.
Is that what the layer zero does?
Yeah, like layer 0 would be a good example. They're like a messaging protocol which can, basically sends cross-chain messages, and those messages can, do whatever it needs. It can perform arbitrary actions. So you could say we're going to lock up these assets here, or we're going to burn them or convert them or send them, or we're going to unlock an action over here because we did something on this side. And so that's where the bridge happens on that. So this is, yes, like you said, with the third-party service, that's a good example with layer 0, or across or wormhole. I guess those are kind of the three big ones.
Yeah, and so a lot of these like mainnet to layer 2 bridges are trustless. So if something went wrong with that layer 2, you can just take your funds out on mainnet. But you might have to like wait a few days or a few hours or something.
7 days.
Yeah. You have these other services where like, okay, let's say I wanted to transfer from Base to Arbitrum. They'll do that right away for me. And then they'll go through the process of moving those funds over and taking them out on Arbitrum if they have to do that.
And the reason for the 7-day thing is because it's called an optimistic roll-up. And so the idea is that let's say you were to try and double, you were going to take out more than what you had, and somehow you were able to confuse the system, and you were to try and, I don't know, fudge the system and post data that says something wrong. You have people that are watching the chain and watching that, and they have the 7-day challenge window to be like, hey, wait a sec, that transaction is wrong. That is like not valid, and then can post that up, and that like transaction can be slashed or kind of reneged or whatever. So it's like it's a security measure of kind of like these watchtower type things, I guess is the way to think about it in a sense.
It just seems to me, and I'm very new at this, but it just seems to me that the layer 2s are therefore almost level of centralization or a level of risk that is antithetical to the main premise. And I understand you want the reduced fees and the transactions, but have there been layer 2s that have been, I'm going to say, corrupt or caused?
Yeah, so that's a good point. Like it is a scaling thing. So a lot of these are still working towards that full decentralization. So you have this kind of middle ground. They are, like, I have painted it out to be that they're not very secure. They are extremely secure, and there haven't been any trust issues. And like with Arbitrum, this risk is pretty low. You still have like a committee of people that would have want to upgrade this in order to screw you if they could. You do have other chains that are not as great. We look at this Katana. I've never heard of it. Okay. But yeah, they have like maybe a few more risks that you want to be aware of. A majority, like there are still some centralized parts of it, but like 99% of it is not. And that's not to say that it's, you can trust it fully, but a lot of these companies are also working towards improving.
And the 7-day access or 7-day delay till you access your funds is essentially managed by a smart contract then. And
yeah.
As you said, that contract is the law and it's been reviewed by peers and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, do we have a mic on this side? Oh, right behind you.
Those layer 2s, do they use sequencers?
Yes.
So is there a way to decentralize sequencers?
It's a very difficult problem. And there are teams that are working on it. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about that problem. Decentralizing the sequencer is the hardest part of a layer 2, I would think. So essentially, on Ethereum, you have this mempool of transactions that's waiting to be included into the block. And then you have these validators that they see, okay, these are the transactions and we're going to order them in this way. On a layer 2, you don't necessarily have all of those validators like picking from this mempool. There's right now a lot of these have just a single sequencer that grabs these transactions and puts them in. So that's where I'm saying the censorship problem is, or there is a potential for censorship there. There haven't been necessarily any issues with sequencers so far, but it is something that a lot of these teams, that's the large focus, is decentralizing the sequencer. Yeah.
I just want to ask a general question. I haven't looked at a dashboard like this in a while. Why do you think Arbitrum has become so much more popular than Optimism at this point?
Probably like for TVL.
Oh yeah, I guess.
Yeah, probably because of Hyperliquid's bridge.
Oh, okay, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the politics because I know a lot of things were kind of happening because Optimism came out first, right? And there was like a lot of.
Yeah, Optimism I believe was the first optimistic rollup. Yeah. Arbitrum, they're kind of like a different ethos-ish. But you also have like Base Chain is a OP rollup, which has just below Arbitrum now.
True, that I knew that. I forgot that.
I think that's worth noting is that like the OP stack is something else. So instead of it people building on Optimism itself on the actual chain, now you've got Base, which is on OP stack. You've got Unichain.
Ink.
Forgot
You get Ink.
about that.
Bob is also our LP or LP rollup. I don't know. Maybe there was something else up top.
So I feel like people might be wondering too. I kind of forget this as well, like the differentiation between something like Polygon, because it's technically like not a layer 2. It's like a proxy chain. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So Polygon is it's like a side chain. So they don't necessarily inherit the security of Ethereum. So Polygon is another chain that runs beside Ethereum, and they post the data, the current state, to Ethereum, but there's no like exit, like withdrawal from Ethereum, and like it doesn't have a lot of the security benefits that these other L2s have. But there is like Polygon ZK EVM, which is a actual layer 2.
Yeah, what do you think has incentivized liquidity the most on the networks?
Yeah, it's quite difficult. I mean, like Coinbase has obviously pushed Base a lot. They are focusing on payments, which could be quite interesting if a lot of people are using Base for payments. That's quite a big thing. Then like DeFi is kind of, I would say, losing its luster a bit. So if you have like, not many people are moving to a new layer 2 to play around with the DeFi that's happening on there, but also liquidity. So like there is quite a bit of liquidity on Arbitrum 1. So if you want to use Arbitrum 1, you have better swaps, you have better lending, whatever, which you wouldn't necessarily have with those other ones. That makes sense?
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little disappointed because I feel like in 2021, I thought layer 2s were going to become a lot bigger, and then Solana kind of, I guess I just think the consumer stuff is interesting with like how the networks, I just feel like some of the politics on Ethereum end up making things backwards. Like I've been thinking more recently about like how everything is kind of based on privy too, and how it's kind of become like a bit of a walled garden.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have too much to say on that. I haven't thought about that much, but yeah. All good. I'll keep going here. So some interesting stuff to talk about. Institutional adoption. This is kind of the last. I have the extras, but we'll go through this as well. So a lot of big companies are starting to notice Ethereum and use it. BlackRock has created a BUIDL like protocol, which allows qualified investors to earn treasury yield on USD. So they can essentially tokenize treasury bills, and you can participate in that if you're a qualified investor. Again, these types of things are a bit more centralized, but they're still interesting because you can interact with the rest of Ethereum when using them. Van Eck also launched a similar thing, tokenized treasury bills, V-Bill, and then the European Investment Bank also launched tokenized Euro bonds. We also have like payments. A lot of companies, so Visa has tried settling payments in USDC before, and they're working on like how they can integrate with Ethereum. PayPal has also launched their stablecoin Pi USD on Ethereum, and BRICS has been looking at Ethereum type stablecoins as a solution for their future currency. Yeah.
I think Visa and such are building their own chain as well.
Yeah, they could be.
Like a Robinhood.
Yeah.
Visa and a few of them.
Yeah. It's still beneficial for the ecosystem because you can interact with them a lot easier. Let's say you have a bridge from their chain to Ethereum or another chain, and you can kind of, the bubble gets bigger that you can interact with. Yeah, not all of them would necessarily go straight for Ethereum, but there is like, BRICS explored this because there's a lot of countries in BRICS that don't necessarily get along, and they want this distributed system that not one person is controlling, which is kind of interesting. And I think that a lot will, some will definitely go for a centralized kind of blockchain, but they might realize that there's not a lot of reason for that, and they might want to look for a more decentralized option. We also have digital asset treasuries. So kind of rather than bringing the traditional world into crypto, some companies are bringing crypto into traditional finance and accumulating Ethereum on their balance sheet. So we have like ETHZilla is kind of the Ethereum version of MicroStrategy. You have a company that's accumulating a lot of Ethereum, and then people that are in the traditional finance world can have exposure to this much easier than setting up a wallet and going through that whole thing. And then BitMine was previously mining Bitcoin and has switched to kind of holding ETH as its primary reserve asset. You have a lot of these companies that are accumulating these digital assets in their company to allow for people to have exposure to them. You also have ETFs, which are essentially a tokenized version a stock version of the token, and you can have direct exposure to them. And then, yeah, let's talk about, I have 3 extras here to go through. So one thing about a lot of blockchains is that they are anonymous, but they're not private by default. Like I said, everything is transparent, so you can really see the trace of funds that went between people, and like, maybe you don't know the name of an address, but you can kind of trace where it's gone and maybe identify a bit about that address. The Ethereum Foundation has been looking at privacy tooling. One of those you may have heard of is like Tornado Cash, which has had some unfortunate issues, but there is really a need for privacy, because if you think about, if we want to replace like cash and have this currency, you don't necessarily want everybody to see where your cash has gone, and you want some anonymity there. If you're going to go buy a coffee at Starbucks and then you're going to go over to this local store that you use, and then somebody is able to like map out what all your transactions are, you want something private for that. For security and for preference for a lot of people, and there are lots of tooling. There is a lot of tooling that has been developed for this. Yeah.
So which one is the best, most popular?
So one interesting protocol is privacy pools. It's kind of a adaptation of Tornado Cash, which allows you to prove that your funds were not illicit. So you can put your funds into this pool and take them out with a different address without having this trace on chain. But you can also prove that my funds came from one of these 10 addresses or something. And all these 10 addresses are good people, and like all their history is good. So you can still use this private tool without necessarily being associated with state actors or hackers or whatever. Yeah, so privacy pools is a very cool one. There's other, like, they're not Ethereum based necessarily, they're not layer 2s, but there's other chains like Zama, which is a FHE blockchain that allows for a lot of private transactions. There's also interesting tooling, can't remember the name of it, but they allow for private voting. So if you have a DAO and you don't necessarily want to like say what your vote is because maybe it influences somebody else's vote or whatever, you can do that on Ethereum privately. And then somebody is able to like tally up all of those votes and say that this was the final amount without revealing what each individual's vote was. Yeah. I can't remember. No. It's by here. Privacy. Wait. This is a good site to see a lot of the privacy-focused projects. It's the Privacy and Scaling Explorations. Sorry? Macy. Macy allows you to vote privately. You have a coordinator that tallies up the votes, and you can see a lot of these are pretty interesting. And on Adahar, this another really interesting technology is that you can prove you're a citizen of a company or a country without like saying exactly who you are. Yeah, ZK. So there was also a demo I saw a while ago where most passports have an NFC chip in it. You can tap it with your phone, generate a proof on your phone that says, hey, I'm a Canadian, but I'm not saying what my name is and my address and whatever. But you could say like, yeah, I'm a Canadian that's over the age of 19. And you can go into a bar and be like, oh yeah, I'm over 19, but you don't get to know what my name is or whatever. It's really interesting technology with that. Yeah, I would take a look at this website, pse.dev. They have a lot of cool projects in the privacy realm. Okay. Another thing that people have been working on, notable, is Farcaster, which is a decentralized social media. So you can have, on top of Ethereum, a social media platform where you can't have censorship, and it makes deplatforming impossible. So like, let's say you're on Twitter and you have 1 million followers and you start, or you're seen as, maybe Twitter wants to censor you, and so they remove you from your platform and you lose all of your 1 million followers. With something like Farcaster or decentralized social media, that following is on chain and not necessarily governed by one person. You can reuse that account on another platform that also uses,
how does it compare to Noster?
I believe it's similar. I'm not sure technically how Nostr works, but it's the same idea. Decentralized social media that is like a backbone that you can't be censored from. But it just kind of shows that Ethereum is a bit more of than just finance. It's this human coordination. And then there's future upgrades. So if Ethereum, it's expensive at times, right? When you have a lot of transactions, and we want to, one of the focuses of the Ethereum organization is kind of reducing those fees on mainnet, so you can still have that security of mainnet without having to pay those crazy fees. Also improving user experience, like I said, with bridging, like having that in the background and having that kind of not something that the user has to focus on, and like payments. Coinbase has been doing some cool stuff there, so they have like a new, it's pretty popular right now, it's called X402 payments protocol, so you can pay just like entering your credit card information, but just with your email account, and you top up your balance and you can pay for a bunch of things. And then also light clients. So in the future, if we want to decentralize Ethereum and make it much easier to stake, what if you could run your validator on your phone and not have to have like a computer running it elsewhere, and you can really decentralize the network that way. Okay, that was a ton of different aspects. Thank you. It was also very high level, and we got to dig into a few things. But if you have any questions on like particular things, doesn't even have to be Ethereum related. Doesn't have to be necessarily what I talked about in these slides. But yeah, any questions? Yeah.
Just a quick question about staking.
Yeah.
I think I read something like the Ethereum Foundation, or they're trying to improve the staking mechanism. This is something called like rainbow staking or something, or not sure. I'm just, is it like without slashing, or I mean, is there any like roadmap or?
Yeah, I'm not sure specifically about that. For like what I was saying with light clients, there's some issues there. So when you're staking, you want to be on the network. Like downtime is an issue because if you're off the network, you can lose participation. And if you're running a validator on your phone, like that might be an issue. Maybe you're not always connected. So I believe they're working on stuff for that. I don't have any specifics that I can think of off the top of my head.
I think just to maybe go off that, yeah, like they're trying to put a bit of a push towards like having more home stakers and trying to incentivize that, or trying to get more attention around it anyways. And then I think they're also maybe working with OBOL and CSM as well, so that we can lower the barrier to entry as well. So if you have people that are 1, 2 ETH, very low amounts, it's still actually very beneficial to have smaller, like distributed validator technologies, but kind of what that refers to, where now you have 4 or 5 validators that make up, or computers, let's call it, that make up one validator. So in a sense, there can be actually some better decentralization to that, because now if 3 of those machines, or 2 of those machines, or wait, how does that work? Okay, 3 out of 4 is still good. The math works there. So if one of those goes down, for example, if they were just running their own validator, then that actually goes down. But now, because those other 4 or 3 are there to keep the network running and staying above 66% for their validator, now they actually continue, the validator is able to continue and continues running. And then when you come back online, no big deal, no issue. So in a way, it does kind of help decentralize it a little further. And yeah, I think the EF is just recognizing like, okay, we can't turn everything to a liquid staked thing. That's not a, not a like feasible way to go forward in order to keep decentralization. Otherwise, you just end up with like 4 entities, and then 2 of them collude, and she's GG, well played. So, yeah.
There was also restaking that was a big thing at some point. Whatever happened to that? Like restaking as an
it adds risk. So I think that was one thing that like people were kind of worried about. I believe it's running still. It's on mainnet. I don't know if there's as much utility for it as people had hoped. Maybe. I haven't been following it though that much.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of people were super excited about it early on, and it's an interesting concept. It really is, but because like you're saying, well, why does our protocol need a token, or why can't I inherit? We needed to run a validator set in order to like inherit the security of that token set or that validator set. So what made sense to me in the kind of the first one, because I was like super bearish, and I've probably in past panels have like talked about how I thought Eigen was going to be one of the horsemen of this cycle, but I don't think it's big enough now to be a horseman. So what I recall, or like what made sense to me was I spoke with some people that were building an oracle off of it, and that made sense because I'm like, well, if you have something like Chainlink for example, that is, it's running off of Chainlink token validator. So everybody has to stake Chainlink tokens to run their validator set, and then that you're taking on the security of the Chainlink token, the token price, and everything else that comes with it. So it's a whole different kind of set of risks. Whereas you're like, well, wait a sec, we know that there's a bunch of Ethereum validators. We want to trust the security of Ethereum. So we have all of these validators here, and if we can just have them kind of repurpose what they're doing, so they're also getting the validation of like underneath to the protocol, but we're going to say, you know what, we can also leverage them to also be a validator set for something like an Oracle, where they are, I think the one that I spoke to was eOracle, and they had like 120 or something. Like it was something like, it was over 100 validator sets that would opt into this, and so then they were the ones who were actually controlling the Oracle price or the Oracle feeds, and then there was always these, posting bounties and slashing and and yeah, exactly. And then they were the ones around manipulation to make sure that everything was fair and whatnot. So like that one kind of clicked as like, that's a good use case. Again, now without a token, I don't know how how they're making money or where the token would fit in if they do that when the security is literally behind Ethereum. So outside of that, I don't know. I haven't really looked around too much. We're just not hearing much about it as much as we did when everybody was just like, it was a pre-revenue. Yeah. When they were pre-revenue, everybody was into it before they were really even live. So, there's hopefully that makes sense for some people. It probably went over people's heads on what they're doing. But basically, Eigenlayer was to inherit the security of Ethereum and repurpose it for other applications that could inherit that security. But we have not seen a lot of things happening with it.
I had a question about the censorship.
Take the mic.
A little closer.
I had a question about the censorship.
Yeah.
So, how the different L2s can block you? I mean, besides just putting you on a blacklist.
Yeah.
But they build on Ethereum, right?
Yeah.
On top of Ethereum. So, how's it gonna work? Are they gonna block you or something?
So, what I had mentioned earlier is a sequencer. So when we have let's say these transactions here, and they're getting organized and then put onto Ethereum. Right now, a lot of layer 2s, it's one process that's doing that. It's not a decentralized process. So let's say you sent a transaction to them and they saw your address and they're like, oh, you just hacked this protocol or something, and we don't want to include you. They could potentially just not choose your transaction to put up there. Now, if you bridged your funds from mainnet, let's say it's just Ethereum and you took it from mainnet and you bridged it onto that chain, you could still, with a lot of layer 2s, withdraw that. But yeah, they could just choose not to include your transaction. Technically, in practice, I don't think it's ever happened. But if you have that security model, you maybe want to think about it. But
thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So essentially, then the underlying premise of that is that if you're on the main net, as long as you pay your gas fee, transaction goes through.
Yeah. Somebody will pick up your transaction because you have all of these validators that are validating this network, and they will look at the mempool. Maybe one doesn't choose to take your transaction, but the next one will, or the next one.
It's just in the queue anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas layer 2s are essentially bundling up, I'm going to say 100 letters and putting them into one big package and then writing that package.
Yeah.
So they can pick and choose what they're going to throw out of the package.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to zoom out as much as possible and just focus on the political aspect and kind of what has shifted in terms of the focus of Ethereum and potentially other cryptocurrencies, particularly since COVID and the exposure of the World Economic Forum and that sort of thing. There's massively more political awareness on an international level. A lot of people far more concerned, and rationally so, about privacy issues and consent and all that sort of thing. So what do you see as the trajectory of that? And
well, yeah, I think inflation is probably one of the things that people are like, oh, okay, maybe I got to look at some other things, because people are very comfortable in cash, in US dollars, Canadian dollars, whatever. Now we're seeing treasury yields increase, and everybody's like, oh, okay. I think that brings a lot of people in from that aspect of it. But then also you see, with voting or something, politically figures are like, oh, okay, the vote was rigged. Now, if you learn about this kind of technology and you see, oh, okay, like maybe we can have more transparent system that's not ran by one person and you're not trusting it as much. I think there are a lot of things that can be improved. Of course, with this technology, I think it's difficult for people to see that still, because it is a more technical thing to look at. You kind of have to learn about it on your own a bit more. There are a lot of companies like Coinbase that are kind of advocating for these solutions. But I think it is very slowly coming into people's view, and seeing that, oh, like, yeah, okay, this does kind of make sense. Or like most people pre-COVID weren't necessarily like, I don't care, like everything's working well. And now you see that like, oh, okay, no, this is kind of all just a house of cards, right? Yeah. So I think people, like, it's starting to kind of find that fit. Yeah.
How far are we
Quantum security? Yeah. So there are a couple different things that are like concerns for quantum like quantum breaking encryption. A lot of newer technologies that are being adopted are quantum safe. So you have, like, in the ZK world, you have ZK Starks, which work on not necessarily a curve, elliptic curve, but a hash-based cryptography, and that is quantum secure. There are still some parts of Ethereum and Bitcoin that are not quantum secure, but that is on the roadmap as well, and replacing a lot of those kind of signature schemes with hash-based cryptography, or I think some different curves are quantum secure as well.
I'm just worried about how long it's going to take and what's going to change when that happens.
Yeah, it could take some time. The other thing to think about, though, with quantum security, like, it definitely do need to focus on it. But if you are able to break encryption, like, what are you going to do with that? If you use it to destroy this whole network, sure, you could do that, and you destroy all the value. You show that, oh, okay, we can break encryption. And
honeypots.
Honeypots?
Yeah. Whale accounts.
Yeah. But when you take those funds out, I mean, if you're very discreet about it, you might be able to. But there are concerns that, like, if you had were able to break encryption, you kind of have to be very careful to be able to use it. Otherwise, people will recognize and see, okay, everything's broken and the value goes to zero. Like, how are you going to sell your tokens if you destroy the network? Yeah. So it is a concern, but it's also like, yeah. I think there's some security models that have to think about it. Some, it's more like the world burns and we're all down with it, I guess. Yeah. Depends on whether they're destructive or want to extract value. You have the, can you pass the mic over there?
I've seen it written in places that Solana, Cardano, things like that are improved versions of Ethereum, if you will. Is that, do you care to comment on that?
There are a lot of trade-offs. So I think that there are a lot of networks that are different and claim that they're better. Something like Solana has a very small validator set and is more centralized. And so it's great for, like, high-speed transactions and whatever, and it's better in that sense. But you forfeit a lot of the security. and then other networks are maybe like, oh yeah, we're so much better because we use this kind of technology instead. But it's kind of just a trade-off. Trade-off rather than an improvement, I would say.
And something like so with Solana, you've got a lot of builders using like the SVM or the Solana virtual machine, which is very powerful and a lot of people really enjoy it. It's building good products. But yeah, to your point there about like a little bit more centralization around the around validator sets, which is arguably now it's far more decentralized than it was a long time ago. So that's better, or distributed, however you want to look at that. You also, I think they only have 1 to 2 clients, or now they had like the one client that was like running everything. Whereas now you have like a second client from FireDancer, which has a little bit better throughput, I think. So there is a little more opportunity, or like there's more clients. Whereas like in Ethereum, there's like a handful. Like we've got like 4 major ones that I kind of know of, and those are all just like the software that you're using to run the actual program or running the whole network. So you just have a few of these security trade-offs, which could improve in time and have improved massively as compared to previous years. You'd heard people say, "Oh, it's just Solana's just a a centralized piece of shit," and now it's quite a bit better, I will say. And we haven't seen too many issues, but sometimes Solana hasn't gone down for. When was the last time it was down? Does it say?
Oh, these are different.
Oh, now we're talking about the execution consensus clients. But yeah, it's been more than a year. So they've been, Solana did have this like, there was a meme where it was like, oh, Solana made it almost a year, when then it, had downtime. So it's still like they're moving fast and breaking shit is kind of like their motto over there. Not to say that Ethereum isn't moving fast as well, but a little bit of a different trade-off. But you get that with throughput and some functionality. And then when you get to something like Cardano, that's they are using a UTXO model, which is like what Bitcoin has. So it's unspent transaction outputs, and and they're using this this programming language called Haskell, which you basically need a PhD in order to write in. Anybody here write in Haskell? Yeah. Oh, you like? Yeah. Good God, you like Haskell. Okay. Anyways, but yeah, it's a very complicated language, and then you have to once you've understood Haskell, it's very abstract. So once you understand Haskell, now you have to understand how to build on top of it. Whereas if you learn Solidity, in 6 weeks you can be banging out whatever you want.
Yeah. So the other thing there is mind share as well. So if you see a lot of very talented people work on Ethereum, and developing things outside of Ethereum, or kind of limbs reaching out as well. A lot of these other chains, if you're starting from scratch, you really have to get people over there, which not necessarily, it's a hard shift over there. That's another thing is Ethereum uses the Ethereum virtual machine, which you write contracts mostly in Solidity, and there's a lot of history there and a lot of people that have learned this and how to use it and develop these applications, and a lot to build off of. A lot of these other chains don't necessarily have that history, and SVM, Solana, there are a lot of talented developers that are working on that as well, but it's a bit behind, I would say, in terms of innovation on that front.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of spin off of that as well, developer tooling was the big the big piece that really unlocked for me when I started looking at other places and other networks. People say, "Oh, we could do that over here." Okay, well, what does that look like? And it really dawned on me when I went to a Cardano event. It was like a Cardano summit, and I was speaking with one of the biggest oracles, the most decentralized oracle that was on Cardano, and speaking with him, hearing that they had, and this was a few years ago, so I don't know where they're at now, and maybe they've innovated a lot more. But at that time, when this was this is the new hot place, they had one price feed, ADA to USD. I'm like, excuse me? What about, nope, that's it. That's all we have. And I said, well, what does it look like to get more? And well, we need to bring more, we need to attract more developers to come into this. And so we're trying to build some grant programs to get people excited about it. And then, well, we need more demand for, other price feeds. And well, we only have, at that time, they had 250 million in total TVL in all of DeFi. So in comparison to L2s here having billions as in TVL, So it just wasn't it wasn't mature enough for a blockchain that has been around for that long. And it's really comes down to developer tooling. When you're a developer who wants to build on top of Ethereum, there's so much resources for you to just tap into and pull from, so that you can literally get started, make something that works, and be able to like have battle-tested contracts as well. Whereas, you know, on top of Cardano, it's a lot more abstract, and therefore maybe not as there's just not as much built out for it. And that's where I think a lot of developers look at that and say, oh, well, Haskell, you can be as creative and there's no hacks and whatever else, but it's just very complicated to build on top of for that. So developers.
Cool.
Right, maybe one more, and then we'll wrap up
about
here.
the
We're
last
getting late
slide.
here.
Yeah, that was the last slide, and yeah. Do you know small validators? So do you have a date for that?
I don't know. I haven't. I'm not sure exactly. No, but you can look at. I believe it's lower than that. You can go to their roadmap, and they talk about different upgrades that are coming.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. One more round of applause here for Owen. Thank you. That was actually really wicked, because like we had so many people asking questions. Who got a lot out of that tonight, or who at least got some of their answers, some of their questions? Okay, good. I'm glad to hear this. Maybe we should do some more like, you know, higher level things, not lower, higher level, because this was pretty high level. So this was good. I'm glad to see this. Glad everybody came out tonight. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a POAP up there. Actually, let me try that right now and make sure that it's working. And swag. Yeah, good call. Good call. We do have this big swag rack back here, so if anybody wants, please take some things. And then if you bring your phone up here and you just see how I did that, and then it'll open up a link. And if you have the POAP app, it'll start validating, and it's going to start minting it. And yeah, so I'm minting the POAP for this. See, look, nice work, Pranay. Yeah. And anybody else that wants to try it. And then if you don't have the POAP app yet, all you got to do, it's going to take you to a web link or a website. And in that link, you're just going to put in either your ENS, so your Ethereum name service handle, so like ETH, your .ETH, or put in your address if you have a wallet with you right then and there. So you can just copy and pasta your wallet address into it. Or you can put your email if you're still a Web 2 and you're just Web 3 curious. So there's lots of options, but just tap your phone right there. Try it. Do it to commemorate that you were here tonight for this amazing event, where we were really lucky that earlier on we had Ken Sim here. So a few people that showed up late, we did have Ken here. So you can check it out in the stream. Alrighty. Let's wrap it there. Thanks everybody for coming out. If you don't mind folding up a chair and just sticking them kind of in the corner, and feel free to kick around for a little bit. All right. Peace out.
Andrew, you want to hit the button there?